When Russia invaded Ukraine, it sparked a large-scale humanitarian crisis. But even before the war began, there were Ukrainian families facing a personal crisis, their children fighting cancer. As Russian attacks began, those families were desperate. They needed access to medication, a safe place to continue treatment. That's where St. Jude Children's Research Hospital stepped in. St. Jude and ALSAC, its fundraising and awareness organization, have been working for years with pediatric cancer foundations and treatment facilities in Europe. Now that network is being used to meet an urgent need, providing safe passage for children with leukemia, brain tumors, and other cancers out of a war zone and into clinics throughout Europe and North America. So far, more than 700 patients have been ushered to safety. 8 of those patients and their family members have flown to the other side of the world to be treated at St. Jude in Memphis. I'm Geoffrey Redick, and I make audio stories about St. Jude patients, families, and supporters. I got to talk with 2 of the people who met those Ukrainian families at the airport in Memphis on their way to St. Jude. Natalia Wobst is on ALSAC's global team. She works with foundations in Europe and Asia. And Yuri Yanishevski works in IT at ALSAC, but he grew up in Ukraine and emigrated to the United States more than 30 years ago. Natalia and Yuri were able to translate for the Ukrainian families as they got settled in after a 5,000-mile trip. Here is our conversation.
I was able to speak to them in Ukrainian. In fact, we walked up the stairs to the aircraft, and I saw their faces lit up because we showed them respect of speaking to them in their own language. And I will confess that my Ukrainian is not great because I haven't practiced it for 30 years. My native language is really Russian. So Ukrainian was a second language, so I had to brush it up. Then I learned that they do understand Russian, and so I can speak to them in Russian as well, and they will understand. And some of them don't speak Russian, but they understand Russian.
And I'm an American who speaks Russian, and in these circumstances, obviously, we're trying to mobilize any resources that we do have. So I was happy to at least speak in a language that patient families, regardless of if they were more comfortable in Ukrainian or Russian, could understand.
Is there anything that you could share in Russian or Ukrainian? I'm just curious what it sounds like.
Let's say, if I were to say, "Welcome to the United States of America," that would sound like "Добро пожаловать в Сполучені Штати Америки."
That's Ukrainian.
That's Ukrainian.
And then in Russian?
"Добро пожаловать в Соединенные Штаты Америки."
So they are quite close.
They are close. That's correct. But there are some differences that would make Natalia not understand what the people are talking about.
Right. Exactly.
So there's now been a second group of patients and some other family members who have arrived. The first time through, maybe you're sort of learning a bit as you're going. Can you kind of compare the two arrivals and greetings?
Yes, for me, I was definitely more relaxed the second time around because I already had expectations as to how this will go. And so for me, it was a lot easier. And then the second group that came, actually a higher proportion of those families preferred to speak in Russian because some of them were from the eastern part of Ukraine that mostly speaks Russian language. Russian and Ukrainian people were like brothers. This is not about differences between the Russian people and the Ukrainian people. It has nothing to do with any of that because they are not different and they love each other.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting with the second group is, to a certain degree, they were aware of the first group. So whereas I think in both cases, there were patient families who never imagined that they'd go to America for the treatment of their child's cancer, at least the second group knew there are Ukrainian families who are already there, who can share with them what they've already experienced, kind of teach them the basics of what they learned over about a week on campus.
I wonder for both of you, does it feel different to come to work knowing that these folks are just a short walk away.
Yes, for me it does feel different, and I can tell you I have mixed emotions. So on one hand, I want to worry about those people and those patients because I had a chance to meet them and I saw that they are in the lowest point in their lives. They have very sick children. They came here, some of them with nothing. One family that came, it's a family of 3 people. They came with one carry-on suitcase for 3 people. And the way it went down for them was that they live in Kharkiv and they went to Kiev for medical consultation regarding their child's cancer. And the war started, and after hiding in a basement, they finally decided to take a trip to the west of Ukraine and then to Poland. And so that's why they only have one carry-on suitcase. Moreover, 2 parents came with a daughter who was very sick, but they left their 20-year-old son behind there to fight in the Ukrainian military. So they came here and, as I said, just clothes on their back and the suitcase. So I found out that St. Jude Children's Research Hospital actually gave all families the credit cards with a certain amount of money on each so they could buy clothing and other things for themselves. And the question I would ask is, what other hospital in the world provides the best care possible for sick children and takes such a wonderful care of the families? And I cannot think of another place in the world that would do it. And so going to my mixed feelings, so worrying about the families on one end, but then knowing that they are in the best and safest place on earth, full of caring people who will do their best to take the wonderful care, not just of the patients, but also of the families.
Yeah, I echo Yuri's thoughts. Having met the families firsthand, you can't forget that. You think about that every day, and to have a community of people who care about the fate of these families, know where they're coming from. I mean, you don't pause to say, should I help? You help.
Like Natalia says, you just jump in and help. That's what pediatric cancer foundations in Ukraine and Poland did after the war began. In normal times, they raise money and awareness in their home countries to help patients access treatment. But now those foundations have reached outside their borders with the help of St. Jude and ALSAC to establish a pipeline to safety, a way to get patients and their families outside of Ukraine and into Poland and then to other countries. It's called Safer Ukraine, and it's possible because of the partnerships that St. Jude and ALSAC have built over many years. Natalia works with the foundations in that part of the world, and she's been on the ground in Kyiv before the Russian invasion.
Actually, my very first week in my job, I landed in Memphis, and 5 days later, I departed Memphis for Ukraine. So I was really getting used to several cultures at the same time. Although I had been in Kyiv before, I had never interfaced directly with a pediatric cancer foundation, visited hospitals in Ukraine. So I feel so fortunate now to have had that visit one-to-one with these partners who also have visited St. Jude Children's Research Hospital since I've been here. So we have a real exchange as far as visiting each other that I'm very grateful for. As far as our colleagues in Poland, I have never been to visit our foundation partners in Warsaw, although that could change over the coming weeks. The foundation there was a one-woman foundation in terms of one person on staff when I met her. From the beginning, we were so encouraged by engagement with her because even though there are many pediatric cancer foundations in Poland, it was clear that she as an individual was strategic, loved to ask for more on behalf of pediatric cancer patients, wanted to work with partners, and so it is absolutely no surprise to me that when it came to that moment when we said, we need your help, that she said yes.
Can you talk a little bit about this triage center and how it's working?
Initially, we had no idea the scope that we were dealing with. We knew that there were patient families crossing the border, that individually she might need to find transportation for them, accommodation, places for them in Polish clinics. But it very soon became clear that this initiative was going to be much larger, and we needed a space that patients could be triaged to decide what is their diagnosis, how stable are they, where can we place them in a clinic at this point, not only in Poland, but in other countries in Europe, and as we've heard, in North America.
Have you heard from the foundations that you work with in other countries?
As you can imagine, everyone has heard of what is happening directly and indirectly among our foundation partners, and it affects everyone in the region to a degree, as these countries in many ways are financially interconnected. There are heritage, familial connections, friends that you might have in other countries. And of course, when there is an urgent need to support some pediatric cancer patients, those pediatric cancer patients who have lost their home from one country, who are fleeing to another, those receiving countries, not only Poland, but any country that is bordering Ukraine or anywhere close to Ukraine that is taking on a refugee population, a patient refugee population, that will strain their own resources. So we're having very serious long and short-term conversations about that.
Yuri, I'm curious if you've been able to be in touch with friends or family members who are in Ukraine or elsewhere in the region.
It was a mixed success. So mostly we have been able to reach out and be connected with the family members and friends. But in at least one case, we haven't been able for a while. But the situation there is really unpredictable. It changes from day to day based on what cities and districts are being bombarded and attacked with rockets.
Is there anyone who you're close with who's been able to escape and end up in a safe place?
Yes, my wife's cousin, who lived in Kiev, she was able to move first to the Western Ukraine and then from there to Poland, and then she had an open visa with the United States, and so she is coming to Memphis in 2 weeks. Then her other part of that family was able to move from Kharkiv to Lviv on the western part of Ukraine, and that was not an easy journey. They were hiding in a bomb shelter for a week or so, and then they finally decided to make a run for the train station, and they were successful. But I heard that many people have not been successful and had to just come back to their bomb shelters.
When was the last time you were in Ukraine?
It was in 2012. We went there to visit with my wife and my children, and we actually went to Moscow, St. Petersburg, and to Kiev, and then my wife with children went to Kharkiv.
How did it feel to be there?
It felt awesome. In Ukraine, Americans were so welcome, even 10 years ago. And it was, so Kiev in particular was in the process of becoming a true European city. And Ukraine was becoming a European country. And the people were happy and beautiful, and it was just great. Life was good.
I'm curious, when you arrived in 1991 and into the United States, what was the reception like? Did you get help from the community?
Oh, yes. We would not be able to make it without the help of the community. We were met at the airport by my wife's brother's family, but also with a group of volunteers who were helping us every step. And we came here with my wife being 8 months pregnant with our first son. And so you can imagine how much help we needed. When we came to an apartment, it had furniture that was donated by very kind people. The refrigerator was filled with food. What else can you ask for? We never lived in a separate apartment in our lives, so this was the first time when we got a separate apartment for ourselves, because we were sharing a 2-bedroom apartment with my wife's parents when we lived there.
It strikes me, and you must have thought of this, of the parallel of your own story and how you were received in Memphis and what you've been able to do for these families who have come to St. Jude.
Absolutely, and I can tell you that volunteering was not the thing in the former Soviet Union. So people did not volunteer because they had great difficulty taking care of their basic needs. So obviously there was no time nor financial resources to volunteer. So it was a learning experience for us, seeing what kind of a difference volunteering makes in people's lives. In that case, it was in our lives, and that was huge. And that positioned us well to be able to volunteer nowadays. I was thinking, how much of a gap or a crater would I have in my experience and my life if I were to unable to help and meet those families and be a part of this tremendous effort that St. Jude and ALSAC are leading. I can't answer that question because, that gap would be enormous. So very fortunate that I am in the right place at the right time.
Natalia, there's, of course, no way to know how long the ramifications of this war will last in terms of how it affects people. As you think through your role and next steps, what generally are you preparing for?
I mean, from the very beginning, we had open communication with our team here at ALSAC Global and with St. Jude's global team, saying we need to do everything we can to keep programs that are in motion, and ensure that everyone feels, from whatever country they are from, that they have a place in our programs. And so my colleagues have done heroes work, keeping things moving for foundations across the Eurasia region as I've been pulled into this specific initiative. I think the only way that we can go on is to prioritize those conversations and to listen to our partners in the region who are telling us exactly what the problems are that they are facing. But we're talking about months and years of planning and, in some cases, rebuilding, which is something that we could have never imagined we'd be doing at this scale.
Natalia Wobst and Yuri Yanishevski work at ALSAC, the fundraising and awareness organization for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. She is the senior regional liaison for Eurasia, and he is a director in information technology services. To learn more about our global efforts, including the Safer Ukraine initiative, visit the website stjude.org/inspire. You can find a link in the episode show notes. This conversation was edited by Lewis Graham, the executive producer of St. Jude Inspire. Production help from Joel Frey, Caleb Suggs, and Andres Garcia. I'm Geoffrey Redick. Thanks for listening.